This is Mrs. Leffers, Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 4. So they're on the street, and this is several hours after his meeting with Friar Lawrence. Romeo meets up with his friends, Benvolio and Mercutio, and they're in the street. He's excited and happy. His mood is key to the comic nature of this scene because remember, he's been like a Debbie Downer the whole time up until this point with his friends. He's excited and happy. So it says the comedy includes much talk of sword play and many suggestive jokes. I'll let you take that for what you will. Mercutio makes fun of Tybalt and he teases Romeo. Remember, Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. So Mercutio and Benvolio are Romeo's buds. Tybalt is their age, but he's a Capulet. He's on the other side of things. And Tybalt is the one that's very hot-headed. Like, if there's a fight, he wants to do it. He wants to fight everybody. So, the nurse comes to carry a message from Romeo to Juliet. Romeo tells her that Juliet should meet him at Friar Lawrence's cell for their secret marriage ceremony. All right, one more second here. All right, Mercutio says, "Where the devil should this Romeo be? Came he not home tonight? Didn't Romeo come home? What? I don't even know where he went." Benvolio, "Not to his father's. I spoke with his man. He didn't go home to his dad's. I talked to his dad." Mercutio, "Why, that same pale, hard-hearted wench that Rosalind torments him so that he will sure run mad." Mercutio basically says, "Oh, the darn Rosalind is driving him crazy. Like it's her fault." Benvolio, "Tybalt, the kinsman to an old Capulet, hath sent a letter to his father's house." Mercutio, "A challenge on my life?" Benvolio, "Romeo will answer it." Mercutio, "Any man that can write may answer a letter." So Benvolio is saying Tybalt has sent a letter to Romeo's house challenging Romeo to a duel. And Benvolio's like, "Oh, he'll answer the letter." And Mercutio's like, "Anybody can answer a letter." He's kind of just being a goof right now. Benvolio, "Nay, he will answer the letter's master, how he dares, being dared." So he's like, no, he will accept this duel. He's going to do it. Mercutio, "Alas, poor Romeo, he is already dead, stabbed with a white wench's black eye, shot through the ear with a love song, the very pin of his heart cleft with the blind bow-boy's butt shaft. And is he a man to encounter Tybalt?" Benvolio, "Why, what is Tybalt?" Mercutio, "More than the Prince of Cats, I can tell you. Oh, he's the courageous captain of compliments. He fights as you sing prick song, keeps time, distance, and proportion. Rests me his minim rest, 1, 2, and the third in your bosom. The very butcher of a silk button, a duelist, a gentleman of the very first house, of the first and second cause. Ah, the immortal passado, the punto reverso, the hi." So Mercutio's mocking Tybalt's name. Prince of Cats refers to a cat in a fable named Tybalt, who was known for his slyness. Then Mercutio makes fun of Tybalt's fancy new style of dueling, like sword fighting, comparing it to precision singing. So he's like, oh, he fights like in a weird way. It's hard to describe, but he's like making fun of the way that he fights. Benvolio, "The what?" Mercutio, "The pox of such antic, lisping, affecting fantasticos, these new tuners of accent. By Jesu, a very good blade, a very tall man, a very good whore. Why, it is this lamentable thing, grandsire, that we should be thus afflicted with these strange flies, these fashion mongers, these perdonamies, who stand so much on the new form that they cannot sit at ease on the old bench. Oh, they're bones. So he's making fun of people who are embracing new styles. So he's basically like calling Tybalt a hipster for all intents and purposes. Like in modern times, that would be the modern equivalent. Like, oh my gosh, he's trying so hard to be cool with his new style of fighting and the way that he talks to people. Whatever, Tybalt. It's kind of what Mercutio is saying. Benvolio, here comes Romeo, here comes Romeo. And remember, he's in a good mood. Mercutio says, without his roe like a dried herring, oh, flesh, flesh, how art thou fishified? Now is he for the numbers that Petrarch flowed in. Laura to his lady was but a kitchen wench. Mary, she had a better love to berheim her. Dido a dowdy, Cleopatra a gypsy, Helen and Hero Hildings and harlots, Thisbe a grey eye or so, but not to the purpose. Signor Romeo, bonjour! There's a French salutation to your French slop. You gave us the counterfeit lady last night. All right, so he's talking about all these famous women in history. Only part of himself, let's see here. Mercutio mentions Petrarch, who wrote sonnets for his love, Laura. According to Mercutio, Romeo's feelings for Rosalind are so intense that great loves in literature like this Laura, Dido, and others like Cleopatra could never measure up. And then he is, I don't know, just making fun of Romeo. Romeo says, good morrow to you both. What counterfeit did I give you? Mercutio, the slip, sir, the slip. Can you not conceive? So Mercutio's like, you gave us the slip. You ran off on us last night. Like, that phrase I've still heard that every once in a while. Romeo, pardon, good Mercutio, my business was great, and in such a case as mine, a man may strain courtesy. He's like, I was in the middle of something big, and I guess I forgot to be polite and tell you where I was going, even though we all know that he heard them calling for him last night. Mercutio, that's as much as to say, such a case as yours constrains a man to bow in the hams. Romeo, meaning to curtsy. Mercutio, that thou hast most kindly hit it. Romeo, a most courteous exposition. Mercutio, nay, I am the very pink of courtesy. Romeo, pink for flower. Kind of calls him a girl right there. Mercutio, right? Romeo, well, then is my pump well flowered. Mercutio, well said. Follow me this just now, and thou hast worn out thy pump, that when the single soul of it is worn, the jest may remain, after the wearing, solely singular. Romeo, oh, single-souled jest, solely singular for the singleness. Mercutio, come between us, good Benvolio, my wits faint. So they're making fun of each other back and forth, and there's a lot of puns happening, and there's a lot of like undertones of dirty jokes happening. And finally Mercutio is like, Benvolio, come over here before we like really start to argue with each other. Romeo, switch and spurs, or I'll cry a match. Mercutio, nay, if our wits run the wild goose chase, I am done, for thou hast more of the wild goose in one of thy wits than I am sure I have in my whole 5. Was I with you there for the goose? Romeo, thou wast never with me for anything when thou wast not there for the goose. So they're talking about how foolish Romeo is, and it's the line about, let's see here, was never with me for anything when there was not the goose. Have I proved that you were a foolish person? Like, you've always been with me through all of the silly stuff I've done. Mercutio, I will bite thee by the ear for that jest. Romeo, nay, good goose, bite not. Mercutio, thy wit is very bitter sweeting. It is a most sharp sauce. Romeo, and it is not then well served in to a sweet goose? Mercutio, oh, here's a wit of Cheverel that stretches from an inch narrow to an ell broad. Romeo, I stretch it out for the word broad, which, added to the goose, proves thee far and wide a broad goose. You're a big fool, basically. Broad meaning like large, and goose referring to foolishness. So they just keep playing with each other's words and like insulting each other back and forth. Mercutio, why, is not this better now than groaning for love? Now art thou sociable. Now art thou Romeo. Now art thou what thou art. by art as well as by nature. For this driveling love is like a great natural that runs lolling up and down to hide his bauble in a hole. Benvolio, stop there, stop there. Again, they're getting a little bit dirty with what they're talking about. Mercutio, thou desirest me to stop in my tail against the hair. Benvolio, thou wouldst else have made thy tail large. Mercutio, thou art deceived. I would have made it short, for I was come to the whole depth of my tale, and meant indeed to occupy the argument no longer. The nurse and Peter, her servant, then come in. He's carrying a large fan. Romeo says, here's goodly gear. Mercutio, a sail, a sail. Benvolio, two, a shirt and a smock. They're kind of making fun of the nurse right now. Nurse, Peter. Peter says, anon. Nurse, my fan, Peter. She's like fanning herself. Mercutio, good Peter, to hide her face, for her fan's the fairer of the two. So Mercutio's like, oh, she wants the fan to hide her face? Yeah, the fan is actually prettier than her face, so yeah, give her the fan. The nurse says, God ye good morrow, gentlemen. Mercutio, God ye gooden, fair gentlewoman. Nurse, is it gooden? Mercutio, 'tis no less, I tell thee, for the body hand of the dial is now upon the prick of noon. Nurse, out upon you! What a man are you! So he's still, like, using words to have double meanings and to be naughty. And she's like, oh, you scoundrel. Romeo, one gentlewoman that God hath made himself to mar. Nurse, by my troth, it is well said, for himself to mar. Quotha! Gentlemen, can any of you tell me where I may find the young Romeo? Romeo, I can tell you, but young Romeo will be older when you have found him than he was when you sought him. I am the youngest of that name, for fault of a worse. Nurse, you say well. Mercutio, yea, is the worst well? Very well took, and faith, wisely, wisely. Nurse, if you be he, sir, I desire some confidence with you. So she's like, are you Romeo? If so, I gotta talk to you. Stop messing around with me. This is a serious conversation. Benvolio, she will indict him to some supper. Mercutio, abod, so ho. Romeo, what hast thou found? Mercutio, no hair, sir, unless a hair, sir, in a Lenten pie that is something stale and hoar ere it be spent. An old hair whore is very good meat in Lent, but a hair that is whore is too much for a score, when it whores ere it be spent. Romeo, will you come to your father's, will to dinner thither? So, okay, the word hair in this little poem is spelled H-A-R-E. So he's referring to a rabbit, and the word whore is spelled H-O-A-R, which refers to like having gray hair. But he is very clearly, there's the double meaning of hair on your head and also whore as in W-H-O-R-E. So he still continues to just be Mercutio. He's like, come on, let's go back to your house and have some dinner. Romeo says, I will follow you. Mercutio, farewell, ancient lady, farewell, lady. He and Benvolio go off, and Romeo stays to talk to the nurse. Nurse, Mary, farewell. I pray you, sir, what saucy merchant was that was so full of his ropery? She's like, who was your friend? That guy was kind of a jerk. Romeo, a gentleman, nurse, that loves to hear himself talk, and will speak more in a minute than he will stand to in a month. So Romeo's like, yeah, he's got a mouth on him. He likes to run his mouth. Let's see here. Nurse, and speak anything against me, I'll take him down, and we're lustier than he is in 20 such jacks. And if I cannot, I'll find those that shall scurry, knave. I am one of his flirt gills. I am none of his skeins mates. Turning to Peter, and thou must stand by too, and suffer every knave to use me at his pleasure. So the nurse is like kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. She's a little bit crazy, and but she knows when somebody's making fun of her, and she knew that Mercutio was making fun of her, and now she's kind of giving Peter, her servant, a hard time, like, why didn't you stand up for me? What's your job? Why are you even here with me? Peter says, I saw no man use you at his pleasure. If I had, my weapon should quickly have been out, I warrant you. I dare draw as soon as another man, if I see occasion in a good quarrel, and the law on my side. So what he's saying is, remember, if they get into a fight, the first person to start it gets killed, right, by Prince Aeschylus, because he already said that. So Peter's like, I'm not risking anything stupid because somebody's making fun of you. I'm not going to do it. Nurse says, now, afore God, I am so vexed that every part about me quivers. Scurvy knave, pray you, sir, a word. And as I told you, my young lady bade me inquire you out. What she bid me say I will keep to myself, but first let me tell ye, if ye should lead her into a fool's paradise, as they say, it were a very gross kind of behavior, as they say. For the gentlewoman is young, and therefore, if you should deal double with her, truly it were an ill thing to be offered to any gentlewoman, and a very weak dealing. So she's like, you better be serious, Romeo. Listen here, you little punk. This is my little girl. My little girl. This is my Juliet. So she's like, don't be leading her into this if you're not going to really, like, do this. Romeo. Nurse, commend me to thy lady and mistress. I protest unto thee, nurse, good heart, and if faith will tell her as much. And in faith will tell her as much. Lord, she will be a joyful woman. Romeo. What wilt thou tell her, nurse? Thou dost not mark me. Nurse says, I will tell her, sir, that you do protest, which, as I take it, is a gentlemanlike offer. Romeo, bid her devise some means to come to shrift this afternoon, and there she shall see at Friar Lawrence's cell, be shrived and married. Here is for thy pains. So he's saying, like, tell her to come to Friar Lawrence's cell, and here's a little bit of money for your pains. Like, he's tipping her. Nurse, truly, sir, not a penny. Romeo, go to. I say you shall. Nurse, this afternoon, sir? Well, she shall be there. Romeo, and stay, good nurse, behind the abbey wall. Within this hour my man shall be with thee, and bring thee cords made like a tackled stair, which to the high top gallant of my joy must be my convoy in the secret night. Farewell. Be trusty, and I'll quit thy pains. Farewell. Commend me to thy mistress. Okay? So, yeah, he's like, go tell her, like, I'm down for this. Friar Lawrence is in. Tell her to meet me at the church. Nurse says, now God in heaven bless thee. Hark you, sir. Romeo, what sayest thou, my dear nurse? Nurse, is your man secret? Did you ne'er hear say, two may keep counsel, putting one away? So she's like, you haven't told anyone about this, right? She says, haven't you ever heard the tale, two may keep counsel, putting one away? Like, a secret can only be secret if no more than two people know it. So the nurse already knows it, so that's blown out of, I mean, that doesn't mean anything anyway. Romeo says, I warrant thee my man's as true as steel. Nurse, well, sir, my mistress is the sweetest lady. Lord, when 'twas a little prating thing, oh, there is a nobleman in town, one Paris, that would fain lay knife aboard, but she, good soul, had as lief see a very toad, as see him. I anger her sometimes and tell her that Paris is the proper man. But I'll warrant you, when I say so, she looks as pale as any clout in the versal world. Doth not Rosemary and Romeo begin both with a letter? So she just kind of rambles, the nurse, at times, and she's like, there's this guy that really likes her, and he comes around, and sometimes I like to give her a hard time and tell her that Paris is a better guy for her than you are. But you're a good guy, because your name starts with the same letter as Rosemary, and that's a pretty thing, and it's going to be good. Romeo, aye, nurse, and what of that? Both with an R. Nurse, mocker. That's the dog's name. R is for the... No, I know it. Begins with some other letter. And she hath the prettiest sententious of it, of you and Rosemary, that it would do you good to hear it. So the nurse is not literate. And so at this point, he's like, yeah, both of our names begin with an R. And she's like, it can't possibly be an R. That sounds like the noise that a dog makes. R, R, R. No, it's some other letter. Romeo, commend me to thy lady. Nurse, I 1,000 times. Peter, anon. Nurse, Peter, take my fan and go before and apace. Okay, so Romeo has sent for Juliet and is hoping to be able to meet her and get married. That is the end of scene 4.